I'm Ellis Martin. Join me now for a conversation with Jerome Jabbour, CEO and Director of Matinas Biopharma, trading as MTNB on the New York Stock Exchange. Matinas Biopharma is a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company focused on enabling the delivery of life-changing medicines using its lipid nanocrystal LNC platform technology. Jerry, welcome back to the program. Nice to have you with us today.
Ellis, thanks so much for having me back. It's always a pleasure.
I understand you just announced a research collaboration with ViiV Healthcare to evaluate formulation of antiviral drug candidates. Let's talk about that.
That's correct, Ellis. And this really is a really important moment for Matinas and for our LNC platform delivery technology. We've had a number of conversations over the years, and Matinas is one of those companies that's not a binary investment. We have a lot of different technologies and products within the company, and recently we've spent a lot of time talking about our prescription omega-3 and kind of the profile of that drug and how it's set up to be potentially a best-in-class drug in a billion-dollar class. But we have this really disruptive drug delivery platform, which allows us to take molecules and make them orally bioavailable and deliver them right to a cell in a non-toxic fashion. And our strategy with that delivery platform is to really utilize the dollars and the expertise of big pharma to drive utilization or application of this platform forward in a non-dilutive manner. And just earlier this week, we announced a research collaboration with ViiV Healthcare, and that's really important because it's our second collaboration this year. And for those in your audience who may not be familiar with ViiV Healthcare, they certainly will be familiar with the companies who joined together to start ViiV Healthcare. And so ViiV Healthcare came into being in 2009 as a joint venture between Pfizer and GlaxoSmithKline, focused exclusively on HIV and the development of antiviral therapies to treat, hopefully prevent, and eventually cure HIV. And so in announcing this collaboration with ViiV Healthcare, we've essentially kind of aligned ourselves with some of the biggest companies in the world as we look to provide a delivery solution for antiviral therapies in a much needed area.
Does that mean we're using potentially Matinas platform technology to mitigate AIDS or prevent it?
That's correct. I mean, ViiV's whole goal is to design and create medicines to treat that disease, a disease that impacts about 1% of the world's population. And that may not sound like a lot, but it's more than 70 million people. And as with a lot of drugs, delivering medicine in an effective way and making sure that it's not toxic to the patient continues to be a challenge across the board. And when you're talking about HIV, there are obviously a number of antiviral medications which are used today in those patient populations. But over time, the disease has gotten smart and it hides in the body. And it hides oftentimes in cells in our body called macrophage. And it almost makes it very difficult for medicines which are not designed to gain access to cells to be effective in treating HIV. And it just so happens that our platform delivery technology is designed specifically to go to macrophage or to be taken up by macrophage. So there is a lot of excitement about our ability now to take existing medicines like those at ViiV Healthcare and help make them more effective and safer for patients and get drugs exactly to the right spot in the body where this disease is hiding. And this is not our first foray into the HIV area. I mean, last year we announced a collaboration with the National Institutes of Health where they were looking at not taking a small molecule drug, but actually taking some gene therapy drugs, an antisense drug, and attacking certain enzymes in the brain that are impacted by HIV. And so this is our second collaboration in the HIV area, but it's the first one with industry and provides, we believe, some validation from large pharma that our technology has the potential to solve some of these issues.
So as I understand it, you're using existing medicines and a delivery system that you're a part of with regard to delivery that mitigates the toxicity risk. Did I get it right?
That's correct. Yeah, you're You're exactly right. You're a great listener, Ellis. And that's exactly what our delivery technology does. We can make oftentimes IV-only medicines oral, get oral bioavailability, and we get access to cells without creating unwanted side effects. And so that is what piqued the curiosity of Big Pharma in this instance. This model, this collaboration allows us to learn about what the synergies may be with Big Pharma without deciding how to value our platform in advance. And so it sets us up to be a part of the proof of concept with their molecules, and then positions us, once we have data from these early stage studies, to then talk license with companies like ViiV Healthcare, Pfizer, GSK, about utilizing our technology, paying us for it, paying us downstream milestones in development, and then ultimately a royalty on sales of products that Big Pharma commercializes. So it allows us to really reap the benefit of our role without the traditional cost and risk of drug development. So it really mitigates a lot of challenges for small companies and allows us to be a meaningful solution without having to take on those burdens.
Interesting. Streaming royalty, you've employed that system and a method of project generation where you get to keep the projects and you're everybody's friend. You're not just one big pharma company's friend, you're everybody's friend.
And that's why the platform lends itself to a licensing strategy. We are positioning this to create a number of strategic verticals so that we can participate in multiple markets across multiple therapeutic categories, across multiple companies, and not have to compete with these groups. We announced our first collaboration in January. That was in the oligonucleotide space, which is in the gene therapy space. Now we have antivirals in our wheelhouse, and we're working towards several other collaborations in different areas. And what we want to do is stack these all together and increase the number of shots on goal.
Typically, and I know you're aware of this, Jerry, typically investors like to see a company that does just one thing and do it well. They're not necessarily attuned to different verticals, but you're breaking those molds.
We're breaking that mold, but we're also have that mold in our back pocket in terms of our internal development focus is on our omega-3. That's an area we know really well. We have the world's experts working with us on that program, but we weren't just going to shift our entire focus back to being a single asset company. That creates a binary opportunity and, in our opinion, increases investor risk. What we want to do now is capitalize on two potential best-in-class assets and mitigate that risk and increase the amount of opportunity. And the reality is what we're really good at with this platform technology is formulation, understanding how to encapsulate these molecules in a way that Big Pharma cannot with its existing technologies, and then give it back to them to really run with it. And so we are mitigating risk and increasing opportunity, and that should really resonate with investors.
And aren't your partners, isn't ViiV covering the cost of a lot of this and your other partners?
And that's a really important part, Ellis, because we are able to advance our delivery platform on the back of non-dilutive dollars, where we don't have to utilize existing capital or not a tremendous amount of existing capital, nor do we have to raise additional capital, which dilutes investors to drive this technology forward. We have now collaborators with deep pocket who we can now utilize not only their expertise in the design of molecules, but their financial resources to help drive this forward so that we don't have to spend our own dollars.
Well, let's talk about those financial aspects of the company that you just referred to, specifically your first quarter 2019 financial results. Now, you raised $32 million. Since Big Pharma is covering a lot of the cost of these developing technologies, where does that money go?
It's a great question, and that really was a transformational transaction for us. It was led by large fundamental healthcare institutions. It was led by a group called Vivo Capital, a $3 billion Palo Alto hedge fund, and their interest was in helping us to advance the omega-3. So a lot of the resources or a lot of the dollars that we raised in that financing are being pointed towards our lead asset in the omega-3 space. But we don't have to sacrifice advancing the platform at the expense of the omega-3 because of both industry in terms of these platform collaborations, but also the federal government in the form of the National Institutes of Health is paying for our next study with our lead antifungal drug called MAT2203. And they're paying for a next study that will be conducted in cryptococcal meningitis, which is a brain fungal infection, and will likely start later this year. We have an FDA interaction teed up for June to finalize that protocol. There's a lot of excitement within FDA because there's really no good alternative to treat that deadly fungal infection today. So with the dollars we have on hand, and at the end of the first quarter, we had more than $40 million in cash. That gives us a runway well into the first quarter of 2021, and through a number of meaningful value-driving catalysts where investors don't have to worry about when we're going to raise money next before we create additional value in the company. So the combination of the dollars we've raised today and the opportunity that with success in some of these collaborations, we will have big pharma companies we believe wanting to write us checks, which can then fund all aspects of our business. So it's set up pretty well now that we have the financing in place for this to become an execution and a milestone achieving story.
What are we looking at 6 months to 12 months down the road with regard to Matinas? What exists for us in the future?
There's a lot, Ellen. You know, it's certainly not a short list of things. For us, we have a lot of different milestones coming up. So obviously, starting this trial in cryptococcal meningitis is really big, and we'll have some first PK data from that study later this year. And PK data in that study is very important because what we're looking to do is taking an existing medicine that's very, very effective, but very, very toxic, and give it to patients. And the PK data, we believe, will show us that this drug is well tolerated. That's not just check the box sort of data. That's meaningful. And then we will begin to see data from these collaborations. We hope to have data by the end of the year on the collaboration we announced in January. That will be important because that will signal the opportunity then to bring in licensing dollars. And then when you think about MAT9001, it's about getting that drug into patients. We're going to start 2 studies with MAT9001 in the second half of this year. One will read out by the end of the year. We'll have an additional data readout early in the first quarter of next year. And there's also some macro issues going on. Our main competitor in the omega-3 space is set to get an expanded label, which would allow it to treat more than 70 million patients in this country. And that's where market expansion will occur. And remember, we have head-to-head data against that drug showing that we're superior across a number of different lipid biomarkers. So whether it's starting studies, whether it's data from these studies, whether it is market events which cause valuation increases, the back half of 2019 and the first half of 2020 are full of milestones which we believe will significantly increase the value of Matinas.
You know, when I first became aware of MAT9001 and Matinas, I thought, great, you'd be a potential takeout candidate. And that always looks good as an investor with all these other verticals. I see you as a significant entity on your own and might be around for a long time and turning away takeout offers from Big Pharma. But that's not my call.
That would be a good position to be in. And what we're intent on doing is creating value, creating opportunity. And if people continue to want to engage us in either taking our assets on an individual basis or they want to scoop up the whole company, we'll listen. But we have so many different things going on that there could be any number of discussions on a product basis or a company basis where we become a takeout candidate. But those discussions become appropriate and more exciting as we continue to increase value in the company. Any sort of takeout transaction is always done on a multiple of what your current valuation is, as in companies project what your value is likely to be in the future. And so our attractiveness is only going to increase as we execute and advance these programs. And we're not looking for one company to make one decision to buy Matinas. We are aligning ourselves with multiple deep pocket partners who each could write checks, which would be very attractive for us to consider.
Well, Jerry, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks so much for joining me today on the program. I look forward to more updates in the near future.
Ellis, we always appreciate your time and the opportunity to give updates to your audience, and we look forward to talking again very soon.
I've been speaking with Jerome Jabbour, CEO and Director of Matinas Biopharma, trading as MTNB on the New York Stock Exchange. Find them at matinasbiopharma.com. I'm Ellis Martin.
Would you like to be one of the first to see who we are following? Subscribe to our audio newsletter. It's free. EllisMartinReport.com.